So today we are together with Marta Obiols Llistar. Did I say it anyway correctly?
Marta Obiols Llistar. Good job.
Obiols Llistar.
So Marta, I think I've tried to find a time where our schedules connected for, I don't know, half a year maybe. And now we're finally here. So it has been long awaited. And what I wanted to talk with you about is you are a fellow unschooler, and we love to bring more voices from the unschooling world to our podcast. And I'm like, oh, where should we start? Sometimes I ask people about their journey into unschooling. What happened in your life that made you go down this path?
Wow. Well, long version or short version? I don't know which one to give you.
The version you find relevant to talk about today.
So I became a teacher. I studied education not because I wanted to be a teacher in a school. So I already was different, right? I wanted to work in a hospital because some kids are there for a long time and they have teachers to keep going with their education. So if they go back to school, they can keep going. So I was very attracted to that job. And for that job, I needed to be a teacher. So that's why I went to education. But I never got that job because you have to wait for a teacher to leave for you to go in. So that was incredibly difficult for me to get that chance. That's how I became a teacher in a regular school. And that's when I realized I didn't like it at all. I became a mom also at the meantime, and I didn't like school for my kids, and I didn't like it for me. So it was twice. I didn't like it for my kids, and I didn't like it for me as a job, as a teacher. So I kept thinking, okay, well, I'll try another school. I kept trying other schools. I kept giving it chances. And I realized that the perfect school didn't exist. So I was desperate and I took my kids out of the school without knowing anything about the homeschool world. I knew nothing. And then when I jumped into that world, I was so lucky to encounter a mom that asked me, what curriculum are you using? Because here in America, everybody asks you that if you're a homeschooler. Which curriculum are you using? And that's when I said, I don't know, I'm brand new, I'm Googling around, trying to choose, I'm trying to learn. And she said, stop right there and read John Holt. And I said, who? She said, go to the library, put John Holt, and his books will appear. And that's what I did. And I read every single book of John Holt, one after another. And I was a converter. I became 100% unschooler, and I never looked back. I found happiness. My kids learned. My marriage also changed for the better. My whole life changed for the better. And because it was so wonderful, now I'm on social media and I wrote books about it. So I'm that person that was to me, so I am to them, you know?
Marta, actually, there's like a lot of the unschooling parents and moms we have talked with who have kind of a similar background as you, where they are teachers turning unschoolers.
Yeah.
And some people have come to some of them and said, oh, but you can do it because you have the education. So can you help us kill that myth?
Yes, I actually had to learn. I had a lot of creative ideas for lesson plans, and I had to burn them and throw them in the trash. And I kept telling myself no, because I really wanted to trust John Holt and trust the children and trust the whole natural process. So every time I had an idea, I had to fight it. So it's actually very difficult if you're a teacher and you want to unschool. It's actually better if you know nothing about education. I had to completely take it out of my head. I had to learn to not be a teacher. So it is completely a myth.
Yeah, that's hard.
Yeah.
The only good thing, I think, I'm not a teacher, I'm a psychologist, but the
Okay, that's
same
wonderful.
kind.
That really helps.
Well, yeah, exactly. But what does help is I can kind of stop people's questions because I seem qualified. And if you don't want to have the long conversation about unschooling with someone who's
Yeah.
asking, not really out of curiosity, but just out of surprise, then you can say, yeah, but I'm a school teacher. I have the education. And then they'll shut up, and then you can start talking about, I don't know, the World Cup or where you're going
Yeah.
on vacation or whatever. So
It's true that that happened to me a lot. And it's true that I used it as because I was new, I was tired of fighting with my own family and close
yeah.
friends. So when a stranger said, "Oh, you're a teacher, you can do it," I zipped it. Yes, yes, bye bye. It was easier that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think there's a natural process, or I had it myself, where in the start, maybe it was a way for me to find my stamina and my strength and belief that I kind of had to fight people around me and explain to them why this is so much better. Where now we have been on this path for plus 10 years, I'm very chill about it. It's not often a conversation where in the start I often had to explain people how stupid I find the educational system as it is today. And it has so much with it that it's fine to make fun of, but I think it also was like a need to break free of the system, maybe, and
Yeah.
go and knock on the door and say, this is stupid. And before I could come over to a more relaxed place.
Yes.
How you said you had fights in the start with your family. Where are they now? Have they understood it finally?
Well, I'm from Spain, and over there, homeschooling is unheard of. Even though
Yeah.
there's a big community, because I'm inside of the homeschooling community, I know that there's a big community in Spain. But if you're not in that community, if you're an outsider, you have no idea that homeschooling exists in Spain. So my family are those, they have no idea. And well, they just couldn't understand that. They had no idea that I was unschooling. To them, it was just homeschool.
I played
And
that game for a lot of years as well.
it was really hard for them to understand because it's something
Yeah.
so unknown.
Mm.
And well, I'm just happy that I was here in the US and they were over there in Spain. They
Yeah.
made it so much easier.
Yeah.
But when my mom came to visit, she would ask, "I don't see you guys studying. When do you study?" And I used to say, "Oh, it's because you're here now with us. So we're just taking a break." Because she really wanted to see us sitting down at a table studying. And that's not what we did.
Mm.
So I had to keep it. I didn't lie, but I didn't give all the information either. I had to make it easy for me. And I had to concentrate with my kids. And to concentrate with the kids, you have to be happy. So I needed to keep my family away because they made it difficult because they couldn't understand. And I get it. I get it. I get it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, you have to choose where you spend your energy, really.
Exactly. Exactly. And my family here in the US, my husband's family, they were very happy that I was homeschooling. But again, they thought it was for a different reason. They thought it had to do with Christianity and public school, and because here in America, a lot of homeschoolers are Christians. So they thought it was because of that. And I'm like, okay, think whatever you want to think, as long as you don't bother me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my
I think
goodness.
also the first years when you start, it's very vulnerable. You're wobbly kind of, even though you said you were a converter right away, it's still, as you said, your family doesn't really understand, and your in-laws, they think they understand, but for different reasons. So there are all
Right.
these structures around you holding you in place, and that's psychologically, that's a good thing. We're holding each other with the culture that we're in and with the relations we have. We hold each other's identities and life paths, and we become like just a safety net in a way for those that are close to us. It's a good thing, except if you break free from some of the really big defining norms and start doing something completely different, that whole structure will try to push you back. It's really, really hard to stay with your own truth, because at the same time you're a social being and you're a psychological being. You need your people. And I think these, you just said before, I never lied, and I think a lot of homeschoolers have that. I don't exactly lie.
We don't share a lot of information.
Well, yeah, we had years where we called it, we speak educationese. So we translate what we're actually doing into something that people can understand.
Yes, can I tell you something? Oh my goodness. Every Christmas and every Thanksgiving, every time we had a time that we had to see the family,
Mm-hmm.
I would train my children and I would tell them, okay, you're taking piano lessons, right? Okay, so when the family asks you, what classes are you taking? You tell them piano. And then I would tell my other kid, you're reading this book, right? Okay, so next time they ask you, what are you learning? In this book, you're learning this, this, this. Tell them that. Because that way they're going to leave us alone. They want an answer, and the answer has to sound like a school, like a class. So I would help my kids translate what we were doing into what the other people want to hear. And I don't know if this is right or wrong, but it just worked. It worked for us. It worked for us.
But I also think, Marta, that this is what people know. People are not very used to being around children, as they don't spend so much time with them as people who homeschool or unschool and have their kids at home full time does. That when you meet a child to a family reunion or something, you ask them about the things that it's like, what are you doing for work?
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
it's actually just what are you doing for work? So what are you working with? But on a child level, instead of asking more interesting questions. So are you reading a book right now? What are you interested in? Are you playing some games? What do you use your time on? You find fun? So
Exactly.
after I've seen it this way, I kind of relaxes some more when people ask this, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's how they know how to ask.
Exactly.
At the same time, we have a problem.
Yeah.
And that is the whole idea of the adults engineering the children's childhood. And these questions and the engineering that we do of prepping our children to say the right things, that we don't do it any longer, but we did it to some extent, I don't know, 12 years ago. It comes from this idea that in order to be a good parent, in order to take properly care of your children, you have to force them to do things they don't want to do. Force them to do things that are boring, to do things that are repetitive, that doesn't make any sense for them, but that you, the adult, have decided, or maybe you put that decision on the government level or some curriculum you believe in or some teacher you believe in. You have decided, we know what's better for you. We know that you have to give up about 10,000 hours of your childhood, often more, in order to become something that we need you to become, because otherwise you will fail. And that whole matrix being around the children's childhood, and on the mirror of that, the parenting, so you can fail as a parent if you fail to do it. It creates so much insecurity. It creates so much suffering. It creates so much, this is what I find the worst, waste of time, waste of happiness, waste of lived life, and waste of great relationships that could have been, that now becoming this policeman and oppressor-oppressed situation. I think that's a more interesting conversation.
Absolutely.
Well, I used to think like that too, because that's all I knew.
Yeah, I used to think.
I thought just like that. So I'm incredibly thankful for the person that introduced me to the John Holt books, because my goodness, I learned a lot. And by trusting those books, trusting him, and then trusting my children, and I read a lot of psychology books, that's how you break free. In fact, I used to tell people, if you want to unschool, learn how children learn. Now I'm changing my mind. I think it's more important to learn psychology. I think that if you learn psychology, you're going to do a great job unschooling your kids. I think that's all we need to learn. Psychology for us and for our kids, for both.
I think I was fortunate enough that one of my mentors in the beginning said something down the lines of, learning is just a byproduct of living a real life.
Yeah.
So I got that change of mindset very early. It's not about learning. And there's so much in the mainstream matrix about the idea about childhood that is about learning, that us deciding what they need to learn and pushing them to learn it, and maybe even having all these strategies, how do we make them learn it? Yes. Whereas the real learning, things we actually learn, we absorb through being passionate. We absorb it because we are intrigued by something, because we have a problem we need to solve and we don't have the skills, so we go find the skills, or because we are curious, or because we are, I don't know, on a different path, and somewhere there's something that just stumbles upon you, and the next day you know, I don't know, a few words from a language or some fragments of something. So the whole learning cannot be the focus, is not the focus.
It's living.
It's living, and it's loving.
That's when I learned that it's not necessary. Every time your kids learn something, it's not necessary to put it on a paper, like, you know, teachers or homeschool moms like to do, or make a project out of it. No, just living life, you're learning. Yes. There's no need to put it into a project or a paper. You don't need to cut the picture and paste it. It's already learned just by living life.
And the point of the situation is not what was learned, but what was lived.
Yes.
I think a lot of it maybe come from insecurity, where if I can tick a box, then something has been ticked off and it's good and I've succeeded. And it is part of the whole programming in a lot of us people's life that we need to accomplish instead of just need to live. And I look forward to seeing unschooled grown-ups. We have had a few of them on our podcast.
You've got one in the living room.
Yes, but also when they get kids, see how they get kids, see how they grow up, seeing the trust in your children, because it's really wild.
How old are your children now, Marta?
My oldest one is 21. My second one is 19. And my youngest is 17.
Okay, so it's like our older ones. Yeah.
Did you have them in school ever? I can't remember. Were there some time of the time in school?
No, my older one was 9 years old when I took him out of school.
Yeah.
My youngest was 7, and the little one was 5. That's when I took them out. 9, 7, and 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What change did you see in them after having done it?
My goodness, my oldest, he didn't have friends in school. He had acquaintances. In school, he did play with friends, but they weren't friends. They never met on the weekends or after school. So it was just acquaintances, classmates. When we started homeschooling, he built true relationships that they still last. And he had so many friendships, and they call him and they've met and they met so many times. So for him, I saw his social life change.
Yeah. For
my daughter, I saw her hunger. She was so hungry and thirsty for learning. They labeled her gifted when she was in school. but they didn't give her what she needed. So once I took her out of school, she was able to eat and drink all the knowledge that she was craving. And she was reading so many books. It was insane. So for her, it was that freedom of learning nonstop. Leave me alone. People don't bother me. I'm learning. And for my youngest, well, he's the most unschool of all. He didn't go to school. He just did a little bit of preschool here and there. But what I like to think is that if somebody had to label him, I'm pretty sure they will label him ADHD. So I'm very happy that he was able to be wild and free for so many years. He didn't do classes or anything. He was wild and free until he was 14. And then at 14, he chose to go to public school, high school. And he's doing fantastic. So I'm just happy that he had the childhood that he needed, wild and free. And now he's a great student.
It is so both amazing, but for me it was as I'm about to say, as in all 99% of all homeschooling, unschooling families, it was my wife who introduced it in our life. And I remember the fear as a dad trying to trust this, and now I like can ease out on many levels, but I remember looking sometimes and being like, will they ever getting this lost to learn? As our girl who is now 16, she enjoyed sitting with the books, and our boy who is 18, he didn't in the same way. And then at some point they're ready. Then it happens.
Yes.
But to trust that, I mean, from they are 7, 8, 9, where you are used to, now you need to go to school, now you need to learn, but them just evolving at their own pace, learning all the other things that are not things you are curriculum-wise need to learn, to at some point that the hunger comes for knowledge in the more schoolish fashion. I find that very, very impressive to see.
Yeah, to me, it's fascinating. I don't know any other word how to describe this. It's just phenomenal. It's amazing to see a kid that was so wild and free and wild. I'm telling you, wild. And now he writes essays for his school homework. How did that happen? Because he was able to play when it was time to play. That's why it happened. It's so beautiful. It really is.
Our kids are pretty academic. Am I sitting on your? Okay.
Yep.
All 4 of them in their different ways. So in that respect, it's pretty easy for us to be unschoolers, because if anyone had any opinions on the things that you would normally learn in a school context, they can more or less do it or do something similar better. But I just want to say in this part of our conversation, that even if you don't go back and go to high school, and if you don't start reading Shakespeare, and if you don't learn 3 or 4 languages or whatever it is, and you become passionate about fixing cars or riding your bike or whatever you can become passionate about, it's totally fine. Unschooling is not a preparation to do amazing academic stuff when you're an older teenager. That's not what it's about, and it's not an outcome you always see. In some kids it is, and in some kids it is not. Just that as it is in the general population, we're not all on Harvard. I mean, some have different passions and different paths, and some unschooled kids come out and they speak 1 language and they can read and write, and they start playing the piano, or they start fixing bikes, or they start a business or whatever, take a job in a supermarket, and are completely content coming home with the money they need and having the freedom they want. It's not always what you have seen and what we have seen, but I will then second it, that it's been pretty interesting to observe how leaving them be and not just trusting. It's also about being totally okay with whatever.
Yeah.
And also being I can really appreciate a child spending all day staring at flowers or drawing or binging Netflix series or whatever they're doing that they really want to do.
By the way, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
My youngest, for 2 years, he video game and Netflix a lot. A lot. And every now and then it would trigger me back to my childhood when my parents were upset because you were watching TV. And then I was upset with him. And then I would stop myself and say, trust it. He's learning something. He's learning something. And I remember I had to shush myself. And yeah, it works. And I want to say something about being okay. Being okay. My daughter, the gifted one, she loved learning about medicine and science and illnesses, but she didn't want to be a biologist or a doctor. None of that. She's an athlete and she's a musician. So she's putting her athlete and arts into a circus art performing. That's her future. She wants to be an artist performing for Cirque du Soleil. That's her biggest dream. But she loves to learn medicine. She learned medicine on her own, but she just doesn't want to be a doctor. And that's the beauty of being free with your mind, right? Because my parents would have said, okay, honey, you need to learn medicine, go to college to be a doctor. And, the athlete performing stuff is your hobby. And I was able to shut that down. No. Your hobby can be your job. It can be your income. So yeah, you got to be okay with that.
Yeah.
It's...
And also realizing that life is long and you can have multiple careers, and the whole what they're doing when they're 17 is not pointing at how they'll make money for the rest of their lives. What they're doing when they're 17 is what they enjoy doing when they're 17, and it can change in a heartbeat. And that's all good and fine. Nothing will ever be wasted if it was lived wholeheartedly.
That's a good point when you're saying nothing is being wasted. That's a good point. Everything is learning. We think they're wasting their time. No, they are learning. That's a very good point. Yeah.
Marta, this is a jump to the side, and it is because your accent just reminds me of summer. Coming home to Catalonia, I could just hear the Catalonian English accent, and I'm like, oh man! And I love Catalonia. We have spent a lot of
time in Catalonia.
Yeah, it's wonderful. We started our world travels in a bus and parked it next to an animal sanctuary in San Salvador, 1 hour south of Barcelona. But I need to ask, so how did you end up in the States when you come from such a wonderful place? What?
Well, because I was always a different kind of person, right? Everybody was studying college, getting a job, getting married, and staying in Spain. Everybody was staying in Spain. And my mind was like, why do I have to stay in Spain when the world is so big? I want to get out of here. I was 22 years old. I've been 22 years old in Catalonia. That's enough.
That's a lot of hot summers.
Compared to how big the planet is.
That is many Julys that are too hot.
Yeah.
And I was very attracted to the English language, so much. And I didn't want to go to England. And I cannot tell you exactly. Something inside of me told me to go to the US. And I just follow it. I was in love with the US for some reason. I guess I was supposed to meet my husband and become a schooler, right? It was all freaking written in the stars, or call it whatever. And that's why I came, because I had a powerful something here that pulled me, and I just follow it. There's no other explanation, really.
That's great.
No, that's a good explanation.
It's the best reason to do something, is that if you have some inner urge to do it, then go do it. It's what we tell the kids all the time. If there's something, I want to do this, totally do it.
And for a long time, I didn't understand my life, like what is going on. And when I finished, that's why I wrote my first book. When I finished educating my oldest, when he reached 18, I finally understood everything. This is why everything happened. This is exactly why. Sometimes you just gotta wait and see it at the end.
Yeah. Yeah. Our second child is just 18 now. It's a
It's an
journey.
important age, at least for me.
Very.
But then at the same time, we've had a lot of conversations with this exact child because he had to unschool the age thing and had to like unpack it and deconstruct it and be. It was just like when he was 15, and in our country where we come from, you would be done with basic schooling, the mandatory schooling, for about 15. And people that summer, spring, kept asking him, so what are you doing next year? And we were full-time nomadic, you know, and he likes reading literature, and he was like, yeah, I think I'll go for a run in the morning and I'll hang out at the beach and I'll read my books, have lunch before dinner. He was so baffled, and we were so unschooled that I didn't even realize. I had to stop and think, why do people keep asking? Because it stresses him out, actually. Why they ask? He came to me. Why is everybody asking me this question? Why is it so much up in the air what I'm doing next year? I'm just going to continue living. And the same thing happened, but in a bigger scale, when he was closing in on 18. It's about a year ago now. So the last 6 months of being 17, he had a lot of these questions. So now what? And it kind of freaked him out. And we had to unpack it. And, you know, nothing happens. It's just another day in your life. You're the same person, 17.999 versus 18.0. It's not a big deal. So yeah, I don't know.
That is absolutely true, and I agree with you. The age is silliness. However, when my first one was born, he was unplanned, and I had a very hard time accepting what happened to me. So when he was born, I told myself, I was angry at me, and I said, well, now you got to do a good job until he turns 18. You better do a good job. So I put that standard of, you better be the best mom ever until he turns 18. You better. So,
and then after 18, you could be a shitty mom.
Exactly. So when he turned 18, it brought all those emotions back. It's like, oh, wow, I've done it.
Okay, yeah, get it.
But now I agree with you. Obviously, that's just so silly. The age is just silliness. But back in that time when I was so angry at myself, I put myself.
But it was a circle in your life. It was a full loop. I understand. I just wanted to, I mean, I think it's a good idea to also open that up, that the age is maybe not that important. And I say that with a lot of hesitation, because right now we're traveling with 5 teenagers. 3 of them are, 3 of are our own, and then we have 2 friends. And we are in a pop-up situation in Krakow with a lot of other families with more so I don't know, what are they, maybe 35 teenagers who are all more or less fully nomadic in the same city at the same time. And age matters a lot to them.
Yeah.
Actually, whether you're 15 or 17 and they have a lot of standards, but it's not about education. Yeah, okay, I better shut up because I actually don't know what to say about it. I just realized.
No, but it also mattered a lot for me when I was 15, that someone was 17. When we look at them, we are like, oh, you're not so different. But I remember being like, oh, they're 17 and I'm 15. It's a big age gap in the state you are at, but not when you look at it from being older.
It is.
But you know what? And it's the society that you live in. Maybe I'm going off course now, but when I grew up in Spain, I was 15 and I had a boyfriend that was 17, and that was okay. But here in the US, I keep hearing my boys saying, oh, You cannot date the 2-year-old younger than you, or if you're 18 and you date a 16-year-old, that's illegal. There's so many laws and rules right now that
Yeah.
the age
I
matters.
remember being 15 and being really annoyed and jealous at the 70-year-old boys who dated the 15-year-old girls I wanted to date. Yeah,
Who did you want to date?
you, but it took me many years to get it.
And society puts things so much too. Like my daughter, for example, when she entered college, the college started the day before she turned 18. The day before. So she was 17. She couldn't go that day. She had to be 18. There's laws, you know, sometimes you gotta put up with the law.
So Marta, the book, so Marta, the book how many books have you done? So and what are they about? Can you share?
Okay, so I've done 4, but 2 in English and 2 in Spanish.
Okay.
So the first book is when my son turned 18, all my emotions went wild and crazy, and I've never written anything in my life. And somehow I spent 2 months in front of the computer, not cooking, not showering, just writing all day long. My family couldn't believe it. And I wrote a book, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what have I done? So then I gave it to my son because he's an amazing writer, and my older one is an amazing writer and amazing editor, and I'm a terrible writer, but I wrote a book. So he edited to make it more understandable. And then I said, I think I need to publish it because I think somebody needs to read this book, because there's so many books about unschooling, why you need to unschool. But is there any book about how does it look like? What does it look like? The whole, until the end, what does it look like? I don't think there is. Maybe there is, but I don't know. So I said, I need to put that book out there because somebody needs to read it. So I put it out, I published it. And then I felt guilty because why did I write this in English? There's a lot of people in Spanish that need this book. What have I done? So then I wrote it in Spanish. And the editor in Spanish, because again, I'm a really bad writer, so I needed an editor. The editor said, Marta, add this and add that. So my book became so much better in Spanish. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, what have I done? Now the English people don't have that. And now I have to write a second book in English. And at the same time, I receive a lot of questions. And I answer all the questions in the second book. So the second book is about how to unschool. The first one is all my life and unschooling until my kid turns 18. And the second one is how to. If you want to know and you have no idea and you don't want to read John Holt books or Peter Gray, then you can read my book and I tell you how to unschool. And then I'm like, oh no, I've done it again. Now the Spanish people don't have this second book. So I wrote it in Spanish and I made it so much better in Spanish that now I feel guilty for the English people. But I'm tired, so I'm gonna leave it there. I'm gonna leave it there. So yeah, the first book is my story and the second one is how to.
Nice.
Yeah, because some families don't know how to learn how to teach how to read, teach how to write, how to do a high school transcript. So it's just that I teach them.
Yeah. Then, as we like to keep our episodes around these 40-45 minutes, it's a kind of a good place to round up. So if we could end with one of the advices from one of the books, you can take it in Spanish or English, that's up to you. And if you also can share with people, where can they find you? What are the names of the books so they can go find them? And we will also put everything in the show notes, of course.
Yes, my first book is called 18, An Unschooling Experience. And my second book is called A Successful Education. And I talk about success inside the book. What's success? Because we think it's one thing, but it's another.
It's something else. Yeah.
A successful education. And one advice I used to tell everyone learn how children learn, and that will take you there. I also used to say, de-school your mindset, because if you de-school your mindset, unschooling unfolds by itself. But now I'm changing my mind. Now my advice is learn psychology and fix yourself, because we all have some kind of issues and triggers. My gosh, if you work on yourself while your kids play, I think that's the best thing you can do if you want to unschool. Learn psychology or self-help books. I think that's my advice nowadays.
Yeah. And do you have a homepage we should share with the people just listening?
Yes, I have a webpage that is called successfuleducation.com, and you can find me on Instagram and TikTok. I think I'm called Unschooling Story 18.
Perfect.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I had so much fun talking with you.